Chicago Tonight, Black Voices is made possible in part by Fifth Third Bank and by the support of these donors.
At Fifth Third, we believe when diverse voices are heard and empowered, communities are made stronger, lives are made better, and the future holds greater promise for all. That's why we're proud to support Chicago Tonight Black Voices. Together, we can make a difference. Together, we can drive change.
Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight Black Voices. I'm Brandis Friedman, and thanks for sharing part of your weekend with us. On the show tonight, the role of school counselors in keeping kids healthy mentally. The city's guaranteed basic income program was set into motion months ago, where it stands now. A new film on Instagram gives audiences a first-hand account of what life was like before slavery. Chicago's first Black librarian and how she built one of the largest collections of Black history in the U.S.
I'm connecting through music with other people, and I feel like it's what everyone needs right now, to just remember that there is humanity left.
Plus, how the Chicago Children's Choir is working to bring about change that the world can hear in their annual Black History Month concert. First off tonight, as the pandemic takes a toll on kids and their mental health, getting them the support they need remains challenging. School counselors are often a primary resource for mental wellness and guidance, but few can be found in America's schools. According to the latest data from the American School Counselor Association, there was one counselor for every 424 students during the 2019-2020 school year. In Illinois, the ratio was one counselor for every 592 students. The American School Counselor Association recommends one counselor for every 250. Joining us now with more are Autumn Cabell, Assistant Counseling Professor at Depaul University, and Terrell Key, President of the Illinois School Counselor Association and a former school counselor. Terrell and Autumn, thank you so much for joining us. Autumn, let's start with you, please. What kind of mental health support can school counselors provide?
Yeah, so school counselors can provide a variety of mental health supports to youth in schools, including short-term individual one-on-one meetings, as well as small group interventions like grief counseling, stress management groups, anger management groups. And then also school counselors do classroom visits where they can talk about mental health topics like managing stress, signs of anxiety, and other mental health topics along those areas, on a wide variety of areas. And so school counselors and the role that they have in mental health varies from that individual level to that small and that large group level as well.
Now, the U.S. Surgeon General released a public advisory in December with recommendations to address what he called a, quote, youth mental health crisis. One of them was to expand the school-based mental health workforce, which includes using federal, state, and local resources to hire and train additional staff, such as school counselors, nurses, social workers, and school psychologists. Terrell, what do you make of that recommendation?
I think it's an incredible recommendation. I think the money needs to be allocated to hiring more school counselors, but we also need to allocate money to great programs like Depaul so that they could market the school counseling program and get more candidates in there, because we need school counselors all around the state. We need to develop more programs around the state. I know we don't have a ton in Illinois, and we need more, and we need to try to figure out a way to get school counselors at every grade level, whether it's at the elementary level, because elementary students deserve to have a school counselor. Same thing for middle school students. Many in Southern Illinois, a lot of schools don't have elementary or middle school counselors, and the same thing goes in the middle of the state. So we definitely need those dollars, not only to pay for the school counselors, but to further develop the program so that we could have the school counselors available when the time comes.
And Terrell, how does the case overload or lack of counselors in schools impact students?
It impacts them in so many ways, because school counselors are constantly overwhelmed and they're not able to go out and do some of those direct services that Autumn mentioned. So like they need to be in there doing those classroom lessons, using the Ask a National model to change mindsets and behaviors, to uplift students through tough times, to help them build resiliency when they're going through tough times like we are now. So when we have incredibly high caseloads, it kind of knocks out some of that because we're constantly responding to crises like all the time. Like if there's a suicide intervention or anything like that, they could take up X amount of hours, a lot of hours. So it really takes away from our ability to get in those classrooms and change mindsets, behaviors, and uplift the children that we serve.
Autumn, in an op-ed for USA Today, you wrote, you called the Surgeon General's advisory a clarion call to increase and diversify the ranks of mental health professionals in our nation's schools. How do you bring diversity to school counseling while also making sure that you have enough school counselors out there?
Yes, so it starts even in our master's graduate programs for school counseling, the marketing materials for potential students who are interested in serving youth in the school system and marketing that to Black, brown men as well. We have a shortage of male school counselors in the school systems across the nation. And so being intentional and even the marketing materials that are used for recruiting students to school counseling programs. And then once they're there in those school counseling programs, retaining them in the school counseling programs by supporting them, by letting them know that they're needed, that they are important, that there's jobs for them out here in the workforce for school counseling, and supporting them through every part of the process to become a school counselor and to become a competent school counselor who's able to meet the needs of the diverse student body that are in our school systems in this country today.
Now, we spoke with a school counselor for Chicago Public Schools, who's the only counselor at an elementary school of about 400 students. She also points to the student counselor ratio being one of her concerns. Here's a bit of what she said.
The recommendation is there for a reason. And so I definitely think that some of those challenges would be at least cut in half if the ratio was the recommended ratio across the board in all of our schools in the country. I would say that I do feel like I have support with the various, funding and things that came down the pipeline during the pandemic. We have, been able to receive support from community organizations with coming into our buildings to counsel students. We do have a social worker presence. So I definitely feel that the support is there.
And Autumn, coming back to you before we go, why is it important to support school-based mental health services specifically?
Yeah, we have had a shift in how schools view mental health and how our country views mental health in recent years. And so this is the opportunity to capitalize on meeting the needs of our students. And it's important, as that school counselor mentioned, to have those ratios in place. So that way they are able to do their job, do what they're trained to do. So many school counselors across the nation are being tasked with administrative duties that are outside of their role of supporting the mental health, the social emotional learning, the academic and career success of our students. And so it's important to build those pipelines, but also support school counselors who are in those pipelines and support them by supporting those 1 to 250 ratio recommendations from the American School Counseling Association.
Okay, this is something I'm sure that I could continue talking to the two of you about for a good bit more time, but unfortunately we are out of time. My thanks to Autumn Cabell and Terrell Key for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, whatever happened to Chicago's plan for a guaranteed basic income pilot program? We look into it right after this. The mayor's office says residents should be learning exactly who would be eligible to apply for Chicago's new Guaranteed Basic Income program by the end of this month. The city approved the plan in its 2022 budget 3 months ago, promising $500 a month to 5,000 low-income households for 1 year. It would be the nation's largest test of a guaranteed basic income program. Joining us now with more are 36th Ward Alderman Gilbert Villegas, who spearheaded the effort for guaranteed income in City Council, Dorian Warren, co-chair of the Economic Security Project, and Richard Wallace, founder and executive director of Equity and Transformation. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Alderman Villegas, let's start with you, please. So the mayor's office says that we should be getting more specifics on this guaranteed income program soon. Can you give us an update on where the city is, where the city council is on implementing it?
Yeah, well, thank you, Brandis. So right now, there's a working group that's putting together some of the criteria, and there's an RFP that is already on the street and is due by next Friday at noon. And so that's where we're currently at right now. It is a little frustrating that it's taken a long time. We started this effort last year in February, having hearings and then passing and introducing an ordinance in April. So it is frustrating given the fact that the president and Congress acted so quickly to pass the American Rescue Plan. And this pandemic has devastated Black and brown families throughout the country.
And if you had to ballpark it, how long would you say before future applicants will see those first checks?
Well, listen, I've been in city government for quite some time and state government for almost a decade. I can tell you that RFPs do not move quickly. And to say that this would be money in cash in the hands by summer would be very optimistic. So I'm probably thinking fall of this year.
Richard, your organization, Equity and Transformation, you launched your own guaranteed basic income program to provide $500 a month to post-incarcerated residents of Garfield Park. Tell us a little bit about that project and how it's going.
Yeah, we designed the Chicago Future Fund. Thank you for the question. And it was designed essentially to alleviate the burdens of post-incarceration. A number of our residents, a number of our people in the communities that we represent in West Garfield Park have a number of barriers. A lot of those are permanent punishments or collateral consequences. And so we wanted to see if the direct cash payments will impact that and allow them to actually achieve some of the goals that they have. And so the project is going great. They're on their third payment. Today is the 13th. Oh, it's on the 11th. So on the 15th, they'll have their fourth payment, and there's been no hangups and no challenges thus far.
Now the city's taken a little bit of criticism, and I hear Alderman Villegas frustrated that it's not moving as quickly as he would like. But there's also some criticism that the city's taking too long to establish the application process and to get these checks out to people. You know, as someone who's operated one of these programs, what's your reaction to that?
You know, our project took a year to get off the ground, right? And that's from fundraising, implementation to the distribution of the cash. And so I think what's most important for me is that we do our due diligence and ensure that the people who need the resources most get it. And sometimes that is not an easy process or a speedy process, but it is possible. What we were able to do in targeting formerly incarcerated people in West Garfield Park wasn't an easy lift, and it took a little bit of time, but we have the program now and the right people are getting the money.
And you've got the infrastructure is in place and rolling. Dorian Warren, the Economic Security Project advocates for guaranteed income, saying, quote, cash is one of the most direct and effective ways to provide financial stability to those who need it most. Why direct cash payments over other financial assistance programs?
Well, it's not either or in our view. We think we need everything on the table. We need a strong and robust safety net. Of course, workers need higher wages in the city and in the country. And so direct cash, as we've learned from experiments over the last several years, is the best way to get money into the hands of people who are struggling to make ends meet. We have the data, we have the stories from those that have received this cash and other demonstrations around the country. Of course, there's Stockton, California in 2019. But also as a country, we just went through an incredible experiment. Think about the stimulus checks in response to the COVID-19 pandemic that the alderman already mentioned. Think about the expanded child tax credit last year where for 6 months, many parents, especially in the city, received direct cash from the government to provide for their families, and it was monthly. So we know what happens when you get cash into the hands of people that need it the most. People pay utilities, they pay bills, they put food on the table, they get school supplies for their children. We know that it is effective. The data is pretty overwhelming on this question, and it's time to really move forward with this pilot program.
And Dorian, you just named all of those examples from over the past couple of years, the child tax credit, for example, and others, just direct cash payments that have been sent to families to help recover during this pandemic. Do you think that all of that has helped to shift people's minds about this particular concept as a solution to economic stability when people may not have been so willing to consider it in the past?
I think you're absolutely right in terms of the question. I think there was skepticism before both the first demonstration in Stockton, where we collected a lot of data and we could show the impact on not just people's financial security, but well-being as well. Lower anxiety, lower depression levels. And in fact, the people that did receive the money in the Stockton case were much more likely to be employed and have a job at the end of the program relative to the control group. So I think, yes, we have the data. There are now something like 90 demonstrations in this country. And it is precisely because of the crisis of the COVID-19 pandemic and the economic crisis. But let's remember, there was an economic crisis, particularly in Black and Brown communities before the pandemic. And that is still the case right now. But yes, the pandemic did help shift people's, I think, understandings of what is the role of government and what is the role of direct cash assistance. And I hopefully we have turned the table on 40 plus years of attacks, particularly racial and gendered attacks, especially on Black women, and demonization of Black women around cash assistance. I hope that we've turned the table here as I think back to, for instance, welfare reform in 1996. We're having a very different conversation right now.
Absolutely. Now, the mayor's office also sent us a statement saying, quote, "We are working regularly with aldermen, advocates, policy experts, and people who have experienced poverty to ensure the program reaches all four corners of the city and in ways that will improve quality of life and economic insecurity." We've only got a little bit of time left, so I'm going to try and get through a couple more questions. But Richard, back to you. Has the city reached out to you and your organization for a little bit of guidance on implementing this, considering you've already done it?
Yes, my role, we sit on the advisory council for Chicago's Resilient Communities GI pilot. And so I get to sit there to advocate on behalf of the communities we serve at Equity and Transformation, and that's Austin, Inglewood, West Garfield Park, predominantly formerly incarcerated system impacted people from Chicago.
And Alderman Villegas, you know, in about 30 seconds, why is this such a top priority for you?
Well, it's a top priority for me because I'm actually a recipient of a program that was similar, survival death benefits from Social Security. When my dad died when I was young, my mom got a stipend, both me and my brother, until we were 18, and that was a game changer. Allowed my mom the ability to work with dignity, making sure that she was home after work to make sure we did our homework. You know, raising two boys in the city can be very challenging, and I can tell you that she made sure that she was there to take care of us, and it was because of that stipend, which allowed her the flexibility to take care of us, but also work with dignity.
Also, so a labor of love for you, obviously, Alderman Villegas, and we look forward to hearing from the three of you again as this program eventually gets underway. For now, our thanks to 36th Ward Alderman Gilbert Villegas, Richard Wallace, and Dorian Warren for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, a film that offers a first-hand account of what life was like before slavery. Stay with us. The DuSable Museum and film studio Stello Stories are teaming up to tell the story of a West African boy kidnapped into slavery.
Hi, welcome. I'm Oluda Equiano, but everyone calls me Equiano.
Equiano Stories is a new film that can only be viewed on Instagram. It brings to life the story of Oluda Equiano, who was enslaved at 11 years old in 1756. His memoir is told in a series of stories posted over a 48-hour period. Followers can watch Equiano's life and journey as if he is living right now, posting about his day, starting out as a carefree boy to being kidnapped and taken to a slave ship.
Young Equiano, which is what we focus on, what this story focuses on, is the most important to us as educators of Black history, educating on and through Black history, art, and culture. And that is our origin story, which begins in freedom, not in slavery. And that origin story this way has never really been told. So we're very excited and honored to be bringing Equiano's story to new generations, younger generations, and really highlighting the beauty of African life before enslavement. which is something that is so much needed. It is educational, and it is a beautiful story. And, you know, it's very hard to dehumanize someone when you've seen their lives and their families and the joy and the beauty, just like any other culture.
Equiano Stories premieres Wednesday on Instagram. The DuSable Museum will also have an exhibit of Equiano's village to coincide with the film's release. Check out our website for more details. Remembering, reclaiming, and reconnecting. That's the theme of this year's annual Black History Month concert by the Chicago Children's Choir. Arts correspondent Angel Ito caught up with them at rehearsals at the Chicago Cultural Center and offers a preview of what can be expected later this month.
The Chicago Children's Choir is back for their annual Black History Month concert. The virtual concert will feature a number of African songs that explore the history of African American culture in the United States. They're taking concertgoers on a Sankofa journey, a word from Ghana which means to return or retrieve what was lost.
It's a chance to educate all people about just Black history and how it goes beyond just slavery. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea.
Anaya Chase Mayfield is one of the featured choir members.
In many institutions, Black history always starts at slavery, and I think people need to recognize that way before that, we were kings and queens, we had our own empires, we were a very prosperous and rich country, and I feel like the music that we sing kind of reflects that.
From Nigeria to Jamaica, the songs featured in this year's concert come from multiple countries. Former choir member Sanita Jackson says it's that commitment to diversity that makes the Chicago Children's Choir so special.
We've gone beyond cultural appropriation to cultural appreciation. These young people sing these African-inspired songs because they're part of them. Because I think that Americans are finally beginning to embrace that we are African, we are indigenous, we are European, we are Asian, we are everything. So it is not unusual, thankfully, for these young people, these children and these young people to be singing all kinds of music. And it's where we ought to be. And these young people are already there. They've left us behind. They've gone into the new world, and I encourage that.
Children are held hostage by the madness of adults. And what you see when children have the freedom of expression. They know the truth, and they sing the truth, even if it's a painful song. And adults need to listen. They are the future, and they are a reflection of ourselves.
Whether it be Lift Every Voice and Sing or a gospel song sung in Yoruba, choir members hope their voices will bring about change that the world can hear.
You have tone, you have cadence, inflection, pitch. So you have all these devices that are working towards the emotions, the heart of a person. It's hard to speak directly to a person and get right to that, but with music and all these devices and energies and the collective behind you, it's easier and it's deeper. And no matter how you feel about a certain song, it gets you there. And it may just take a person a minute to admit it, but that's what we're hoping to do.
For Chicago Tonight Black Voices, I'm Angel Ito.
Remembering, Reclaiming, and Reconnecting with the Chicago Children's Choir debuts February 26th at 6 p.m. And you can visit our website for more information on how to join the live stream. February is, of course, Black History Month, and to celebrate, we're spotlighting a Chicago Black history maker every week. This week's history maker is Vivian Harsh, Chicago's first Black librarian. Harsh was born in Chicago in 1890. She attended Wendell Phillips High School, where she joined the History Club, growing her love for history and books. After graduating, she began her career with the Chicago Public Library in 1909. Harsh worked her way up to becoming head librarian of the George Cleveland Hall branch in Bronzeville. As Chicago's urban historian Sherman Dilla Thomas points out, Harsh collected materials to build one of the largest collections of Black literature and history in the U.S.
We consider Vivian Harsh a very important historian, though She never wrote a word. What she did was she collected very important books, newspaper articles. If you're a really smart brother or sister getting a PhD, you put in a thesis or a dissertation at a university. She collected those, and a lot of those documents, church minute meetings, we still have today at the Carter G. Woodson Library at the Vivian Harsh collection. And so what she does for Chicago is she helps us with historical research and maintaining and understanding our history.
Harsh died in 1960. Her collection, the Vivian G. Harsh Research Collection of Afro-American History and Literature, can be found at the Woodson Library in Washington Heights. And that's our show for this weekend. Join me and Paris Schutz next week at 7 on Chicago Tonight. And we leave you tonight with some more from the Chicago Children's Choir. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight Black Voices, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for watching, and thank you for sharing part of your weekend with us. Have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that supports free educational initiatives in the legal profession.